I don't know if anyone's ever going to read this. Hell, I don't even know why I'm writing it. Habit, maybe. Maybe guilt. Maybe I think writing it down will keep it from clawing at my brain all day. My name's Daniel Hayes. Officer Hayes, if you ever caught me in uniform. I've been working patrol for about 6 years now, long enough to know the difference between a real call and bullshit, long enough to spot trouble before it finds me, or so I thought. I transferred to Milbrook, Oregon 3 months ago. Small town, population maybe 8,000 on a good day. The kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and the biggest crime is usually someone's kid spray painting the water tower. I figured it'd be easy work. Quiet nights, maybe catch up on some reading between calls. Should have known better. Sheriff Martinez handed me the card on my first night shift. Laminated thing. Looked like it had been through a few hands. She didn't smile when she gave it to me. Didn't make a joke about it either. "Read this," she said. "Memorize it." I looked down at the card. 6 rules typed out in plain black text. No department letterhead. No official seal. Just rules. Night patrol guidelines. Milbrook County 1. Do not drive over 40 mph after sunset. 2. Always stop for children on roadside at night. 3. If anyone appears in your back seat, pull over immediately. 4. Avoid railroad tracks when trains pass after midnight. 5. Ignore all animals unless they speak to you. 6. Never engage with doppelgangers. Do not respond to your own voice on radio. I read it twice, then I looked up at Rebecca. This some kind of hazing thing? She didn't laugh. Didn't even crack a smile. "These aren't department policy," she said. "They're survival instructions, passed down through every night officer who's worked this county for the last 30 years. I waited for the punchline, the part where she'd tell me it was all a joke and welcome me to the team. Instead, she just stared at me with those dark eyes of hers. "You're serious?" "Dead serious." I looked at the card again. Rule 6 made my skin crawl for some reason. Doppelgangers, like something out of a bad horror movie. "Rebecca, come on, this is Officer Hayes." Her voice went flat. "Professional. 3 officers have died on night patrol in this county. All of them learned these lessons the hard way." The way she said it made me shut up real quick. There was something in her tone, something that said she wasn't messing around. "Keep that card with you," she said, "every shift, and follow those rules exactly." She turned to go, then stopped at the door. "Hayes, yeah?" "Welcome to Milbrook." Then she was gone. I sat there for a minute, staring at the card. Rule 5 kept jumping out at me. Ignore all animals unless they speak to you. What the hell kind of place had I transferred to? I slipped the card into my shirt pocket and headed out to the patrol car. Small town superstition, that's all it was. Probably some old wives' tale that got passed around until everyone started believing it. Maybe those 3 officers died in car accidents or heart attacks, and the locals just made up stories to explain it. That's what I told myself anyway. The streets of Milbrook were dead quiet at 10:30. Most of the shops on Main Street had been closed for hours. A few porch lights were still on, but not many. I drove slow, taking in the layout. 2-story houses with big front yards, old trees lining the sidewalks, the kind of neighborhood where kids still rode bikes without helmets and nobody locked their doors. Peaceful, normal. So why did I feel like I'd made a terrible mistake taking this job? I learned about the rules the hard way during my second week, not from breaking them myself, but from watching what happened when someone else did. It was a Tuesday night, maybe 1 in the morning. I was heading back from a routine call, domestic disturbance that turned out to be a couple arguing over whose turn it was to take out the trash. The kind of thing that makes you wonder why people call the police instead of just talking to each other like adults. I was driving north on County Road 12 when I saw headlights coming up fast behind me, real fast. The car blew past me doing at least 60, maybe 70. In the dark, I couldn't make out much except it was a patrol car. I grabbed my radio. "Dispatch, this is Hayes. I've got a unit heading north on County Road 12 at high speed. Can you confirm who's running code? Static crackled back at me. Hayes, no units are running code at this time. Can you identify the vehicle? I squinted ahead, but the taillights were already getting small in the distance. The car was moving toward Devil's Curve, that sharp bend where the road hooks around Miller's Ridge. Negative on ID. Vehicles approaching Devil's Curve now. I pressed the gas pedal down. Not past 40. I'd been good about that rule, even if I didn't understand it, but I wanted to catch up, see who was in such a hurry. By the time I reached the curve, the other patrol car was gone. Just gone. I slowed down and took the turn careful. The road stretched out straight for about 2 miles after the curve, and I could see clear to where it dipped down toward the valley. No headlights, no taillights, nothing. I tried the radio again. Dispatch, I've lost visual on the vehicle. No sign of it on the north stretch. Copy that, Hayes. All units, please check in. One by one, the voices came back. Martinez was at the station. Rodriguez was handling a call on the south side of town. Webb was taking a meal break at the diner. Nobody mentioned Tommy Chen. Dispatch, what's Tommy's 20? Long pause. Hayes, Officer Chen was assigned to patrol the east sector tonight. Tommy, please respond. Static. Tommy, this is dispatch. Please respond. More static. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Not fear exactly, more like the feeling you get when you realize you've forgotten something important, but you can't remember what. Dispatch, I'm going to swing by the east sector. Check on Tommy. Copy that, Hayes. I spent the next 3 hours driving every road in Tommy's sector, checked the usual spots, the 24-hour gas station, the parking lot behind the high school where kids sometimes went to drink, the old logging roads that led up into the hills. Nothing. Tommy's patrol car had vanished like it never existed. The search started the next morning. Sheriff Martinez called in units from 3 counties. They had dogs, helicopters, the whole works. I told them about seeing the patrol car speeding toward Devil's Curve, but I didn't mention the speed. Don't know why. Maybe I was hoping I'd been wrong about how fast the car was going. For 4 days, we combed every inch of Milbrook County, checked every ditch, every ravine, every abandoned building. The dogs picked up Tommy's scent near Devil's Curve, but it just stopped, like he'd stepped off the edge of the world. Martinez barely slept. She coordinated search teams during the day and worked dispatch at night. I'd see her in the break room at shift change, staring at a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. On the 4th day, I was heading home after my shift when the call came over the radio. All units, we have a possible sighting of Officer Chen on Highway 18, mile marker 42. I was closer than anyone else. I hit the lights and drove as fast as I dared, keeping it under 40 even with the emergency. Found him about 10 minutes later, walking down the center line like he was out for a Sunday stroll. He was still in uniform, but it was wrinkled and dirty. His hair was messed up, and he had this look on his face, like he'd just woken up from a dream and couldn't remember where he was. I pulled over and got out. Tommy? He turned toward me, and I saw his eyes. They were wide and scared, but also confused, like he was seeing me through fog. Daniel? His voice sounded hoarse. What are you doing here? We've been looking for you, man. 4 days. Where the hell have you been? He looked around at the empty highway, the trees on both sides, the mountains in the distance. 4 days? He shook his head. That's not right. I was driving patrol. I was going to check on the old Miller place and the road. He stopped talking and stared at something I couldn't see. Tommy, what happened? The road changed. He said it so quiet I almost missed it. I was driving toward Devil's Curve, and the road just changed. I helped him into my patrol car and called for an ambulance. He didn't resist, but he kept looking out the windows like he expected the landscape to shift again. They took him to Milbrook General for observation. The doctors said he was dehydrated and exhausted, but otherwise fine. No injuries, no signs of trauma, just tired and confused. I visited him the next evening. He was sitting up in bed, picking at a tray of hospital food that looked like it had been made from cardboard and sadness. "Hey," I said. "Hey." He looked better, more like himself, but there was still something in his eyes, something that hadn't been there before. I sat down in the chair next to his bed. "You feel like talking about it?" He set down his fork and stared at the wall for a long time. "You're going to think I'm crazy. Try me." Tommy took a deep breath. "I was driving patrol, like I said, normal night. I got a call about suspicious activity near the old Miller place, so I headed that way. I was running a little late, so I was driving fast, maybe 60, 70 miles an hour. I thought about the rule card in my shirt pocket. Rule number 1. I hit Devil's Curve doing about 65, Tommy continued, and when I came out of the turn, the road was different. Different how? It curved the wrong way, like I should have been heading north toward Miller's place, but suddenly I was going east, toward hills that don't exist." He rubbed his face with both hands. "I figured I'd gotten turned around somehow. Happens, right? So I kept driving, looking for a place to turn around. But the road just kept going, and the hills got taller, and the trees got thicker, and I started seeing buildings." "What kind of buildings?" "Old ones, really old, made of stone with windows that were too tall and doors that were too narrow, and they were all empty, but I could hear voices coming from inside them, people talking, laughing, crying, but when I stopped to look, there was nobody there." Tommy's hands were shaking now. "I drove for hours, Daniel, hours, trying to find my way back, but every turn I took just led to more roads that shouldn't exist, more buildings that made no sense, and the whole time I could hear voices calling my name from empty windows." He looked at me then, and I saw genuine terror in his eyes. "I finally stopped the car and got out, tried to radio for help, but all I got was static. Then I started walking. I don't know how long I walked. Could have been hours, could have been days. Time felt wrong there, like it was moving sideways instead of forward." "How did you get back?" "I don't know. I was walking along what I thought was a river, but it was flowing uphill. And then suddenly I was on Highway 18, and you were there." Tommy grabbed my arm. "Daniel, promise me something." "What?" "Follow the speed limit. I know it sounds stupid, but promise me. Don't drive fast after dark, please." I looked at him, really looked at him. This wasn't someone making up a story or trying to cover for getting lost. This was someone who'd seen something that scared him down to his bones. "I promise." He let go of my arm and leaned back against his pillow. "Martinez wasn't joking about those rules, was she?" "No," I said. "I don't think she was. That night, I drove my patrol route at exactly 39 miles per hour. When I got to Devil's Curve, I slowed down even more, took the turn at 25, keeping my eyes on the road ahead. It curved north toward Miller's place, just like it always had, but now I understood that some rules exist for reasons you don't want to learn firsthand. It was Lisa who taught me about Rule 2, not Martinez, not some manual. Lisa Rodriguez, during a coffee break at 3 a.m. about 6 weeks into my time here. She looked like hell, dark circles under her eyes, that jittery way people get when they've been running on caffeine and nerves too long. I'd noticed it for days, but figured it was just the job wearing on her. "You ever see kids out at night?" she asked, stirring sugar into her coffee with shaky hands. "What kind of kids?" "The kind that shouldn't be there." I waited. Lisa wasn't the type to make conversation, just to hear herself talk. "About 3 weeks ago, I was driving County Road 5, maybe 2 a.m. She took a sip of coffee, made a face. Saw this little girl standing by the road, white dress, maybe 7 or 8 years old. "You stop?" "No." Her voice went flat. Thought it was my eyes playing tricks, or some teenager pulling a prank, you know. So I kept driving. She set her cup down harder than she meant to. That was my mistake. "What happened?" Lisa looked at me then, and I saw something in her eyes I didn't like. Fear, but the kind that's been sitting there so long it's worn grooves. She started following me, not physically. I never saw her straight on again, but in mirrors, in windows, standing at the edge of my yard when I got home. Lisa's hands were steady now, but only because she was gripping the table, always just out of sight, always watching. For how long? 2 weeks. 2 weeks of feeling eyes on me every time I turned around. 2 weeks of checking my locks 3 times before bed and still not sleeping. I didn't ask what made it stop. Something in her face told me I didn't want to know. The rules aren't suggestions, Daniel. She finished her coffee and stood up. They're survival instructions. That was all she said about it, but I started paying attention to Rule 2 after that. Really paying attention. 2 months into my assignment, I found out what Lisa meant. I was driving the back roads near Miller's Creek, maybe 2:30 in the morning. Quiet night, the kind where you start thinking maybe Milbrook really is just a normal small town with some weird local superstitions. Then I saw him. A boy, maybe 10 years old, standing on the shoulder about 50 yards ahead. Pajamas, blue ones with some kind of pattern I couldn't make out from that distance. No shoes, no coat, just standing there in the 40-degree air like he was waiting for a bus. Every instinct I had said this was wrong. Kids don't just appear on empty roads in the middle of the night. Kids don't stand perfectly still in the cold wearing nothing but pajamas. But Rule 2 was clear, always stop for children on roadside at night. I pulled over and got out of the car. The boy looked up as I approached. Normal kid, as far as I could tell. Brown hair, pale skin, maybe a little too thin. His eyes tracked me like any scared child's would. "Hey there," I said, keeping my voice gentle. "What are you doing out here?" "I can't find my mom." His voice was small, exactly what you'd expect from a lost 10-year-old. "She went into the woods and I can't find her." He pointed toward the tree line about 20 yards off the road. Dense pines, the kind of thick forest where you could lose someone in daylight, let alone at night. "What's your name?" "Jamie." "Okay, Jamie, let's see if we can find her." I should have been radioing for backup, should have been asking more questions, but something about the whole situation felt like it was balanced on a knife's edge, like one wrong move would tip everything into something much worse. So I walked with him toward the trees. The boy stayed close to my side, not talking, just pointing occasionally to guide our direction. We reached the edge of the woods and I stopped, pulling out my flashlight. "She went in there?" "Yes, sir." I looked down at him, ready to ask another question. He was gone. Not running away, not hiding behind a tree. Gone. Like he'd never been there at all. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, flashlight beam cutting through the dark trees, listening to nothing but wind and my own breathing. Then I walked back to my patrol car. The relief hit me as I got behind the wheel. Not the kind you feel when you solve a problem, but the kind you feel when you realize you just avoided something terrible, like stepping back from a cliff you didn't know was there. I thought about Lisa's hollow eyes, her shaky hands. 2 weeks of being watched, of feeling hunted. I'd followed Rule 2, and whatever would have followed me home had simply vanished instead. It was during my second month that I learned Rule 3 the hard way. I was driving south on Maple Street around 2 in the morning when I caught movement in my rearview mirror. Just a shift in the shadows, a shape that shouldn't have been there. Someone was sitting in my back seat. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. The figure sat perfectly still, just a dark outline against the back window. I could make out shoulders, maybe the curve of a head, but no details. Like looking at someone through smoke. I should have pulled over right then. That's what Rule 3 said. If anyone appears in your back seat, pull over immediately. But I didn't. I told myself I was seeing things. Trick of the streetlights, maybe. Shadow from a tree branch. My mind playing games after too many night shifts. I kept driving. The presence stayed there for my entire shift. 4 more hours of feeling eyes on the back of my neck, of hearing quiet breathing that might have been my imagination. Every time I glanced in the mirror, the figure was still there, never moving, never speaking, just watching. The dread was the worst part. It filled the patrol car like fog, thick and cold and wrong, made it hard to think straight when dispatch called me to a noise complaint on Oak Street, made my voice shake when I radioed back my status. I tried to focus on the routine calls, checked a few businesses, wrote up a parking violation, normal cop work, but that thing in my back seat made everything feel like I was walking through a nightmare. It wasn't until the end of my shift that I finally stopped the car, pulled into the station parking lot and sat there for a full minute, working up the nerve. Then I got out and opened the back door. Nothing there, just empty seats and the smell of old coffee. The oppressive feeling disappeared like someone had opened a window. I could breathe again. The next week I was driving past the old railroad crossing when I heard the train whistle, midnight on the dot. I'd driven past those tracks plenty of times, rusted rails, rotting ties, weeds growing up between them. The line had been abandoned for 20 years, according to Martinez. But there it was, a train rolling through the crossing, its headlight cutting through the dark. The windows glowed with light that didn't look right, too bright, too clean, like looking at the sun through water, and the passengers inside, they seemed translucent, not quite there, faces that shifted when I tried to focus on them. I remembered Rule 4. Avoid railroad tracks when trains pass after midnight. I turned around and drove the other direction, didn't look back. During my 3rd month, I was parked near Miller's Creek, filling out paperwork, when something tapped on my window. A raccoon, standing on its hind legs like a person, one paw raised to knock again. "Excuse me, officer," it said, voice clear as day, polite as you please. "You wouldn't happen to have a cigarette, would you?" My hand started shaking. I fumbled for the pack in my shirt pocket, rolled down the window just enough to toss it out. The raccoon caught it neat as anything. "Much appreciated," it said. I drove away fast as I could without breaking Rule 1. The raccoon's "thank you" echoed behind me, following my taillights down the empty road. The thing is, after 18 months of night patrol in Milbrook, I thought I had it figured out. Follow the rules, keep your head down, and you go home in one piece. Simple as that. I'd helped maybe a dozen kids find their way back to wherever they belonged. Always the same routine. Stop the car, walk them toward the trees or an old building, and right when you think you're about to follow them somewhere you shouldn't go, they just disappear. Clean. No fuss. Lisa's mistake was driving past that little girl, and she paid for it with 2 weeks of being watched. But me? I stopped every time. Did what the rule said. Never had a problem. The animals were easy enough too. You ignore them unless they talk, and when they do talk, you give them what they want. Cigarettes usually. Sometimes a candy bar from the vending machine. The raccoon wasn't the only one. There was a possum that asked for directions to the old cemetery, a stray dog that wanted to know if I'd seen his owner. Been dead 30 years according to the headstone I found later. You hand over whatever they're after, say yes sir or no ma'am, and they leave you be. Even the backseat thing stopped bothering me. Rule 3 says pull over immediately if anyone appears back there, so that's what I did, every time. Sometimes it was just a shadow that faded when I opened the door. Sometimes it was a woman in a white dress who'd nod once and walk into the woods. Sometimes it was a man in work clothes who'd tip his hat and head toward the old mill. They never caused trouble as long as I followed protocol. Sheriff Martinez started using me as an example for the new hires. "Hayes here's been on nights for a year and a half," she'd tell them. "Still got all his fingers and toes. You know why? Because he listens." She was right. I listened. I learned. I adapted. The railroad crossing at midnight became routine. Hear the whistle, see the light, turn around, and drive the other way. Don't look back. Don't try to figure out where a train gets power on tracks that haven't seen maintenance since the Clinton administration. Just drive away and let it pass. Tommy came back to work after a month of medical leave. Never talked about what happened to him in those 4 days. but he drove 35 mph everywhere now. Even during the day, his hands would shake a little when he had to take Devil's Curve, but he managed. We all managed. That's the thing about Milbrook. You can manage just fine if you respect what you don't understand. The rules weren't suggestions or guidelines. They were survival instructions written in the blood of officers who'd learned the hard way. I kept the laminated card in my shirt pocket every shift. Checked it before I started the car, checked it during my dinner break, checked it again before I headed home. Rule 1 through Rule 6. Never deviated, never improvised, never figured I knew better than 30 years of night patrol experience. And it worked. For 18 months, it worked perfectly. I should have known that was the problem. The call came in at 3:47 a.m. on a Tuesday in October. Marcus's voice over the radio, but wrong somehow. Tight, scared. Unit 12 to dispatch. I need backup at the industrial district. Something's following me. I was 2 miles away finishing up paperwork near the high school. The fog had rolled in thick that night, the kind that made your headlights useless and turned familiar roads into something else entirely. Unit 12, what's your 20? Dispatch sounded tired, normal. Near the old sawmill. Jesus, it looks just like me. My blood went cold. I grabbed the laminated card from my shirt pocket, even though I knew what Rule 6 said by heart. Never engage with doppelgangers. Do not respond to your own voice on radio. But it didn't say anything about helping your partner. I started the engine and pulled onto County Road 9, heading toward the industrial district. The fog pressed against my windshield like something alive, and I had to slow to 25 just to see the yellow lines. Unit 12, repeat your last transmission. Static. Then Marcus again, clearer this time. It's wearing my uniform, my badge. It's... The radio cut to silence. I pressed the accelerator, still keeping under 40 but pushing it. The sawmill was maybe 10 minutes away if I could navigate the fog. 10 minutes felt like forever. That's when my own voice came over the radio. Unit 14 to dispatch. I need immediate backup at the old sawmill. Officer down. Repeat, officer down. Perfect. Every word exactly how I'd say it. The same slight pause before repeat that I always did. Even the way I pronounced 14 with that little emphasis on the 4. But I was driving through fog on County Road 9, and I hadn't keyed my radio. I reached for the handset, then stopped. Rule 6, clear as day on the card. Do not respond to your own voice on radio. My voice came again. Dispatch, Unit 14. Time is critical here. I need all available units to the sawmill immediately. Dispatch responded. Unit 14, we show you at the high school. Confirm your location. Negative, dispatch. I'm at the sawmill. Marcus is hurt bad. Where's my backup? I gripped the steering wheel tighter and kept driving. The fog seemed to get thicker the closer I got to the industrial district, like it was pouring out of the sawmill itself. My headlights barely reached 10 feet ahead. Unit 14, please confirm your badge number for verification. A pause. Then my voice again, but something off about it this time. Too smooth. Badge number 779. Look, we don't have time for protocol. Marcus needs an ambulance. Wrong number. My badge was 882, but dispatch wouldn't know that off the top of their head at 4 a.m. They'd have to look it up, and by then who knows what would happen. I turned onto Industrial Way. The fog was so thick now I could barely see the road signs. Had to lean forward and squint just to make out the street markers. All units, we have conflicting reports. Unit 14, maintain radio contact. My voice responded immediately. Copy that, dispatch. I'm securing the scene. I clicked off my radio entirely. Whatever was using my voice, I wasn't going to give it any more material to work with. The sawmill loomed out of the fog like a ship in gray water. Big wooden buildings, most of them empty for 20 years. The lumber yard stretched out behind them, full of rusted equipment and stacks of rotting timber. That's when I saw Marcus's patrol car, engine running, driver's door wide open, headlights cutting weak cones through the fog, but no sign of Marcus anywhere. I parked 20 feet away and got out. The fog swallowed sound like a blanket. Even my footsteps seemed muffled. Marcus? Nothing. Just the idle of his engine and the distant drip of water from somewhere in the fog. I walked to his car and looked inside, coffee cup still warm in the holder, clipboard on the passenger seat with his patrol log, last entry at 3:32 a.m., radio handset hanging loose from its cord. "Marcus, you out there?" The fog pressed closer. I could barely see my own patrol car now. I reached for my radio, then remembered I'd turned it off, switched it back on, and keyed the handset. "Dispatch, Unit 14. I'm at the sawmill. Found Marcus's vehicle abandoned. Beginning search of immediate area." "Unit 14, confirm your badge number." 882, and dispatch, if anyone else uses this call sign tonight, do not respond. Repeat, do not respond to any further transmissions from Unit 14 unless I provide the code word. "Copy, Unit 14. What's your code word?" I thought for a second. "Milbrook." Code word Milbrook confirmed. Be advised, we've been receiving conflicting transmissions. "I know. Just ignore anything that doesn't include that word." I clipped the radio back to my belt and started walking a grid pattern around Marcus's car. The fog made it impossible to see more than a few feet in any direction, but I had to try. I heard Marcus calling for help from inside the sawmill. The voice came through the fog, muffled by the old wooden walls. "Hayes, in here." Something about it sounded wrong. Too flat. Marcus usually had this way of talking, kind of rushed when he got excited. This voice didn't have that. I drew my weapon and pushed through the main entrance. The fog had gotten inside somehow, rolling between the old machinery like it belonged there. Sawdust covered everything in a thick layer. My boots crunched on it as I moved deeper into the building. "Marcus." "Over here." I followed the voice toward the center of the main floor. The overhead lights were on, casting harsh shadows between the abandoned equipment. Belt sanders and table saws sat covered in dust and cobwebs. Then I saw him. Marcus was tied to a metal chair in the middle of the floor, his hands bound behind his back with what looked like rope. His uniform was torn at the shoulder, and he had a cut on his forehead. "Hayes, thank God." He looked up at me, and his eyes were right. That was Marcus. I kept my weapon ready and moved closer. "What happened?" "Something's been impersonating us all night, using our voices on the radio. It separated us so it could—" Marcus stopped talking and looked past me. "Behind you." I turned around. A figure stepped out from behind one of the old machines. It looked exactly like me. Same height, same build, same uniform, even the same badge number on the chest, 882. When it spoke, it used my voice. "Don't listen to him, Hayes. That's not Marcus. I've been tracking this thing all night." I kept my gun pointed between them, trying to think. The doppelganger looked at Marcus and then back at me. "Look at him carefully. Really look. That's not our partner." Marcus shook his head. "Hayes, don't listen to it. I'm me. I'm real." "Shoot him," the doppelganger said in my voice. "Shoot him now before it tries something else." I studied both of them. Marcus looked scared but angry, the way he always looked when things went sideways. The doppelganger stood perfectly still, waiting. Then I noticed something. The overhead lights were bright enough to cast shadows from everything in the room. The chair Marcus was tied to, the old machinery, me, but the doppelganger didn't have one. I raised my weapon and fired 3 times center mass. The doppelganger jerked back with each shot, but there was no blood, no falling. Instead, it started to dissolve like smoke, gray mist rising from where the bullets hit. The thing that looked exactly like me just came apart, wisps of fog drifting up toward the sawmill's rafters until there was nothing left. The whole building went quiet, except for the sound of my breathing. "Jesus Christ," Marcus said. His voice shook. "Is it gone?" I kept my weapon up for another 10 seconds, watching the empty space where the doppelganger had been standing. Nothing moved except the regular fog drifting between the old machinery. "Yeah," I said. "It's gone." I holstered my weapon and moved to untie Marcus. The rope was real enough, thick and rough against my fingers. His hands were cold when I helped him up from the chair. "You hurt?" I asked. "No." Shaken up, but not hurt. Marcus rubbed his wrists where the rope had been. "That thing hunted me for 2 hours, kept using your voice on the radio, trying to get me to go to different locations. When I wouldn't respond, it just appeared behind me while I was checking the loading dock." "How long was it impersonating us?" "Hard to say. It knew things, Daniel. Our badge numbers, patrol routes, even how we talked to dispatch." Marcus looked around the empty sawmill. "What if there are others out there right now, answering calls in our voices?" My radio crackled. "All units, this is dispatch. We have 3 units responding to officer assistance calls countywide. Units 7, 9, and 15 are code 3 to separate locations." I keyed my mic. "Dispatch, Unit 14, authentication code Milbrook. Those assistance calls may be false. Repeat, possible false distress calls." "Copy, Unit 14. Stand by." Marcus and I looked at each other. 3 units responding to fake calls meant 3 officers heading into traps, just like Marcus had. "We need to get out there," Marcus said. Before I could answer, headlights swept through the sawmill's broken windows. 2 patrol cars pulled up outside, and I heard car doors slamming. "Hayes! Webb!" Sheriff Martinez's voice carried through the fog. "Sound off." "Here, Sheriff," I called back. "Building's clear." Martinez came through the main entrance with her weapon drawn, followed by 2 other officers I didn't recognize. She looked at both of us, then at the empty space where the doppelganger had been. "Where is it?" "Gone," I said. "Dissolved after I shot it." Martinez holstered her weapon. "Good. You followed protocol exactly. Rule 6 exists for a reason." "Sheriff," Marcus said. "The thing was coordinating attacks, using our voices to lure other officers." "I know. We've been tracking false radio traffic for the past hour." Martinez walked over to where the doppelganger had been standing. "Units 7, 9, and 15 are all safe. We managed to recall them before they reached their fake locations." "How often does this happen?" I asked. "Doppelgangers show up maybe twice a year, usually during heavy fog or new moon phases. They study us, learn our patterns." Martinez kicked at the sawdust where the entity had dissolved. "Most officers who engage with them either disappear completely or come back wrong. Changed. That's why Rule 6 is absolute." Marcus rubbed his forehead where the cut was. "It knew everything about us, our voices, our procedures." "They're good at that," Martinez said. "This one had been active for at least 3 weeks, according to the radio logs, probably listening to every transmission, building profiles on the entire night shift." 3 weeks? I thought about all the routine traffic stops, welfare checks, and reports we'd made over the radio. It was planning something bigger than just tonight. "Most likely. Doppelgangers don't usually work alone for this long unless they're setting up something major." Martinez looked at me. "Your refusal to respond to your own voice probably saved more than just Marcus. It kept the thing from completing whatever it had planned for all of us." The fog was starting to thin outside the broken windows. I could see more clearly now, the old machinery casting normal shadows under the overhead lights. "What happens now?" Marcus asked. "Now we finish our shifts and file reports," Martinez said. "And you both remember that the rules aren't suggestions. They're survival instructions written in the blood of officers who learned these lessons the hard way." She turned to leave, then stopped. "Hayes, good work tonight. You did exactly what you were supposed to do." The other officers followed Martinez outside, leaving Marcus and me alone in the sawmill. The building felt different now, lighter, like something heavy had been lifted from the air. "Thanks," Marcus said quietly, "for coming to get me. Rule 6 said not to engage. Didn't say anything about not helping my partner." Marcus managed a small smile. Next time something calls for backup in your voice, I'll know it's not you. Let's hope there isn't a next time. We walked back to our patrol cars together. The fog was clearing, and I could see stars starting to appear through the clouds. Marcus got into his vehicle and started the engine, then rolled down his window. "Daniel," he said. "When that thing was holding me, it kept talking about the other officers, the ones who went missing over the years. I think it knew what happened to them." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. What did it say? That they were still around, still working the night shift. Marcus put his car in gear. Just not for us anymore. I sat in my patrol car outside the sawmill for another minute, watching Marcus's taillights disappear into the pre-dawn darkness. The fog had mostly cleared, but I could still taste something metallic in the air, something that reminded me of old pennies and fear. The drive back to the station took 15 minutes. 15 minutes of checking my rearview mirror every few seconds and keeping my radio volume turned up. Marcus's words kept playing in my head. Still working the night shift. Not for us anymore. I pulled into the station parking lot just as the first hint of orange started creeping over the horizon. The building looked different in the early morning light, more solid, more real, like the night had been holding it underwater and dawn was finally letting it surface. Sheriff Martinez's cruiser was already there. Inside, the fluorescent lights felt harsh after hours of fog and shadows. Martinez looked up from her desk when I walked in. She had a cup of coffee steaming next to a stack of paperwork that seemed too tall for one night's work. "Hayes," she said, "how you holding up?" "I'm fine." I pulled out my notepad, ready to write this up. She nodded toward the chair across from her desk. "Sit, we'll go through it together." I sat down and opened my notepad. The pages were damp from the fog and my handwriting looked shaky, probably because my hands had been shaking when I wrote most of it. "Start from when you heard Marcus's first transmission," Martinez said. So I did. I told her about the radio call at 3:47, about driving through the fog to the sawmill, about finding Marcus's car empty and hearing that wrong voice calling for help from inside the building. I told her about the doppelganger with no shadow and how it dissolved into mist when I shot it. Martinez took notes while I talked, her pen scratching across the paper in steady strokes. She didn't look surprised by any of it, not the voice mimicking or the shadow thing or the way the entity just disappeared. She wrote it all down like I was reporting a traffic stop. "Good," she said when I finished. "You followed protocol exactly right." She opened her desk drawer and pulled out a laminated card, not the one I carried in my shirt pocket, but a fresh one. The plastic was clearer and the text looked newly printed. "We're updating the cards," she said, "based on what happened tonight." I looked at the new card. The first 6 rules were the same, but there was more text at the bottom. Rule 7. When responding to officer assistance calls, establish authentication codes before proceeding. Rule 8. Doppelgangers cast no shadows under direct light. How many officers contributed to these rules? I asked. Martinez set down her pen and looked at me. More than I like to count. Every rule on that card cost someone something. Some paid with a few days of being watched. Some paid with time and places that don't exist on any map. She paused and picked up her coffee cup. And some paid with everything they had. I thought about Tommy's 4 days in that other place, about Lisa's 2 weeks of being followed, about Marcus tied to that chair. The officers Marcus mentioned, I said. The ones the doppelganger said were still working. What happened to them? Martinez was quiet for a long moment. She stared at her coffee like it might have answers floating in it. "We've lost 3 officers over the years," she finally said. "Different circumstances each time, but their bodies were never found. You think they're still out there somewhere?" "I think there are things in this county that don't follow the same rules we do, things that can take what they want and use it however they see fit." She handed me the new card. "That's why we have protocols. That's why you follow them exactly every single time." I took the card and compared it to my old one. The paper felt heavier somehow. "Replace your old card," Martinez said. "Memorize the new additions. And Hayes?" "Yes, ma'am?" "What you did tonight saved Marcus's life, but it also showed that thing we're not easy targets. It'll remember that." The sun was fully up now, streaming through the station windows and making everything look normal again. But Martinez's words settled in my stomach like cold coffee. I finished my report and filed it in the proper folder. Then I walked out to my car and sat behind the wheel for a minute, holding the new rule card. 8 rules now instead of 6. 8 lessons learned the hard way by officers who'd faced things that shouldn't exist. The drive home took me past Devil's Curve and the old railroad crossing, past the spots where I'd encountered children in the road and animals that talked. In daylight, they all looked ordinary, just curves and crossings and empty fields. But I knew better now. I pulled into my driveway and sat there watching the sun climb higher over Milbrook. Normal people were waking up, making coffee, getting ready for normal jobs where the biggest danger was paperwork or difficult customers. I had 6 hours to sleep before my next shift started. 6 hours to rest before I went back out there with my new rule card and whatever fresh challenges the night would bring. Because Martinez was right about one thing. The doppelganger would remember what happened at the sawmill, and if there really were other officers out there, still working some kind of night shift for something that wasn't us, then last night might have been just the beginning. I locked my car and walked to my front door, checking over my shoulder once out of habit. The street was empty except for a neighbor getting his newspaper and a dog walker heading toward the park. Everything looked normal, but I'd learned not to trust normal in Milbrook County. Normal was just what things looked like when the sun was up and the rules were sleeping. I went inside and set my alarm for 4 in the afternoon. Then I put the new rule card on my nightstand where I could see it, right next to my badge and gun. Tomorrow night would come whether I was ready or not, but the rules would be there waiting, written in the hard experience of every officer who'd walked these roads before me and lived to pass on what they'd learned. The accumulated wisdom of survival, one protocol at a time.